what's up? It's been a good minute. I actually want to say how happy I am to see content online from some of these subscription posts some of these subscriptions on YouTube that I've been navigating, because I find it really, really beautiful. And I know I make a lot of coyote rants of the negative. Well, this is going to be a rant on the positive. So, excuse my mess of random stuff. I just have empty boxes. Just boxes and boxes and boxes. That being said, alright, I subscribe to Abba and Preach. I've subscribed to Bailey Sarian. She does like murder, mystery, makeup. And every time, I always want to do like murder, mystery, makeup, mayhem, or madness, or whatever. And both of these amazing channels are voicing the importance of accountability, the importance of acknowledgement and humility in navigating some of these decisions. They're going and voicing to the community, it's important that we assess ourselves and become a little more introspective and accountable to what we say and how we navigate the world. And yes, we're human and we slip and we have mismanaged emotions and reactions, and we have our perspectives, which are quite valid. They might not be right, but they are valid to be a lived experience because we're humans. And so I really, really, really appreciate, especially what triggered this, what triggered this post, quite honestly, is Abba, even in like a dry throat sickness, voices accountability about cheating. And then he goes into that there's going to be an effort of sharing more posts and perspectives of the mess-ups. And I really appreciate that. Like the same way when Bailey Sarian voices, in the past she would say certain comments, and even in the moment, like, she'll voice accountability and be respectful, like, it's not funny, I'm just laughing, I'm a terrible person. And it's really adorable because we're human, and I just really appreciate it, because when thinking about this, like, we learn from other beings, and right now in these, interesting times, pandemic times, whatever, we are navigating the world with less opportunity to interact with other people, interface with other people, and learn. And then the things that I complain about, the things that I get frustrated about, is Western settler colonialism, colonization, that a certain behavior has been imbued upon us. We're indoctrinated in this environment. We don't actually have a singular culture, especially the Americentric perspective or mentality, because, well, the foundation of America is built on lies and deaths of Indians. A mentor of mine, Dr. Darrell Babe Wilson, would say America is spiritually, morally, and ethically bankrupt, and I agree. And so I try to focus my work and my efforts on honoring truth and history. Now, honor the past to shape the future both means that we must honor the wisdom and knowledge of our ancestors. We all can recognize that we all come from indigenous ancestry. We can honor our indigeneity. However, that being said, all of our ancestors have indigenous lands and indigenous earth-based spiritual practices from the lands that they come from. And there's something that is common among all nations pre-contact. Now, pre-contact is before colonization, is before other nations started pushing their way into. And yes, beautiful history. I would not be who I am had these occurrences not happened. I am not one of those people who says go back to where you come from, because some of us come from here for a few generations, or 5, or 8, or tens of thousands. That being said, Indigenous protocol is by becoming familiar with the indigenous peoples of whose land you're on. And indigenous peoples follow indigenous protocol by seeking permission to be there. Or they're invading, or they're coming to assault. But the common practice is to come humbly with gifts and respect and humility and accountability. And so, that being said, we all learn from each other. We navigate the world in an intriguing fashion, and especially around activism. I work with a lot of allies, accomplices, advocates, and a word that I appreciate is co-conspirators, because there's any of those titles, allies. What is a good ally? There's plenty of writings about it. And then also, the word ally has been hijacked, just like the word woke. And so, what is a good ally, and how can one be one? Or what is an advocate? What do they do? What is an accomplice? How do they navigate that role? How can they be accountable to that role? But co-conspirator? Yeah, that's someone who rolls with me. That being said, a lot of these community members who hold that space, who are non-indigenous, and how they recognize their accountability in being a settler on stolen land, doesn't mean that they have to hold the guilt and sadness and anger. Well, technically, they can hold those, but I am not projecting that they should. The guilt and frustration and sadness from historical events. However, what I am asking is for accountability to how we got to where we are. I don't need them to tell me that they're guilty. They didn't do these atrocious crimes against indigenous peoples, against marginalized communities, established policies, yada, yada, yada. All these layered, beautiful elements of history that we have not been taught in our education system, that have not been prioritized in the decision-making policy procedures and practices and protocol creation. All of these things that I try to advocate for because we have the lived experience that is not so healthy. That being said, I recognize that I, as a brown, two-spirit, female-bodied, indigenous person who has legitimate ancestry to the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, Central Coastal California, or what does it count as, like NorCal? We're in Central, but not the Central Valley. That being said, as an indigenous person who calls this place home, I recognize that in situations I could vent and complain about what I hope or wish for or would like to see that allies do, settlers do, colonizers do or don't. But it's from that vantage point. I don't have the lived experience of being a settler. Like, when I travel, I still acknowledge indigenous protocol. Even though I have ancestry to the Bay, when I travel, like I'm making my way into Yelamu, San Francisco, I'm a visitor here. And I will be accountable. If I have an event, I will acknowledge Yelamu. I will acknowledge that the first language of this land is Ramaytush. I do not speak the Ramaytush language, and I am not from Yelamu, village site. I will be an accountable visitor. I attempt to be in community with those who have Ramaytush linguistic ancestral ties. My brain's like, Ramaytush is a language. There aren't no Ramaytush people. But there are people who are descendants from those who lived in Ramaytush linguistic territory. See, just like that kind of like nuanced truth in history, I attempt to honor truth in history wherever I go, no matter how hard or complicated it can be. And I don't try and cut corners or simplify things. I keep practicing. The same way with people's pronouns. Do I cheat and just go to a mental default of complacency when they're not in the room? No. I attempt to be respectful. And if I slip up, I will keep practicing to get better. I'm human. I will slip. I have been conditioned in an environment to assume a female-bodied being may go by she. And I understand and empathize with those who have this trouble. I get frustrated with those who come from an ignorant vantage point. Tangents, see? I go on tangents. Apologies. Rewinding. So I attempt to be a good visitor, a good guest, even though I have ancestral ties. So, for the allies, accomplices, advocates, co-conspirators, they have a different lived experience. I also don't know the feeling of not being rooted to my community. I could imagine, and I can empathize with community who are strong storytellers, who can share perspective, and when I'm with them, being an empath, I catch that energy, but I will never have that lived experience. If I go travel, then I will. I will be on land that I'm not rooted to. If I establish myself in another territory, then I would have that lived experience. But I was raised this way, so I don't have that lived experience from the start. That possible feeling of disconnection. So when these community members voice accountability or voice methodologies, steps, ideas, guidelines, efforts of what they do or have done, both in missteps and in positive forward momentum of accountability, of reciprocity, of humility, I am really grateful and appreciative, because quite similarly to the channels that inspired this post, we are human and we're just trying, ideally, to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And part of that implies being a good person and being accountable and navigating the world in a good way. I'm not trying to say we have to be everybody's friends and we have to do all these things, no. But I'm just saying, like, how can we be good? And good is very subjective. So I'm just trying to say that in that inspiration, I'm really appreciative. So I doubt y'all get a chance to review this, but thank you, Abba, and I appreciate Preach, and I appreciate Bailey Sarian, who inspire me by creating awesome content. I'm not trying to make this a promo video for them, because trust me, there is some posts of theirs that I do not like. Like, it'll get me riled, I'll be frustrated, but you know what? Everyone's entitled to their opinion, everyone's entitled to their perspective, everyone has their vantage point, and that is fine. And I'm glad to be exposed to it. I'm deeply disheartened and saddened that the algorithms of these social media platforms that we're navigating are allowing us to only consume perspectives that are similar to ours. Like, I'm gratefully appreciative because that algorithm helps us get exposed to more things that we do want to consume. Like, it's great, especially, like on TikTok. I love seeing more native TikTok. I love seeing LGBTQ TikTok. I love seeing hashtag polylife. At the same time, I'm not getting exposed to diverse perspectives. And we are entering a state that's quite polarizing. The internet is new to us, and there are no long-term studies on how it's impacting us, and it's deeply saddening that so many people are like, this is the way it is, and that's just how it is. It's like, no, 1998! Google! 1998! I existed in this world for 10 years. El Nino freaking was a flood that damaged our property. I lived off the grid. I had to walk 2 miles carrying laundry with my mother. Come on, people. Oh, it's the way it is. It's the way it is. It's like, oh my gosh. Okay, now I'm dating myself. Now I almost sound like a Gen Xer. So, be kind to yourself. The internet is a new thing. We are attempting to navigate this in a unique fashion, and it just be kind. I just had to say thanks, y'all. Sharing perspective, humility, accountability, and ideally reciprocity. I mean, like, when we learn from these things, give back. If you learn from somebody, like, even if it's a traumatic occurrence, like, and it does, my brain's like, you're not entitled to get what you want, i.e., let's say you wanted to apologize to someone or thank someone, however, it is important that you can be reciprocal to what you've learned. If you learned a really strong lesson, and you might not be able to go to the person who helped be a catalyst to that, then share the wealth, share the perspective, share the knowledge. If you love someone or care about someone or have people in your life, like these young ones, you know what? Of all things, these young ones. A lot of young ones are growing up with these devices as babysitters, and they're observing the world in this perspective. And yes, there are amazing lessons to learn. There are many educational sources of material on here, but some interpersonal efforts, some interpersonal elements of communication, accountability, humility, reciprocity are not taught just by watching. They're navigated by experiencing. And some heavy lessons people experience through trauma. And there are healthier ways that we can learn these things. So If anything, if you learn through trauma and you might be able to prevent a repeat occurrence with someone else, I would recommend you offer that story. That's why indigenous cultures around the world use storytelling. It's not just to tell stories. Media is modern day storytelling. But we also need to be considerate about what we're presenting. Yes, a lot of media is created for entertainment. That's fine and dandy. And a lot of us know that TV isn't real, but you know what? Some of the next generation watch this stuff and think that's how life is, or this is what you can or can't, or should or shouldn't do. And it's like, woo! We need more humility. We need more kindness. So, lots of love, y'all. I am in Yalamu, and I gotta deal with actual traffic now, so safety first. And of course, there are gonna be many people who might judge me for this, but you know what? Technically, it was hands-free. Ha! So, lots of love. This is a positive coyote rant, and yeah, lots of love.